This is the Commonwealth, where we interview the unique people blazing their own trail. For this episode, we're talking with the managing editor of Hail Varsity. Hail Varsity is a Nebraska sports publication. The first 5 or so minutes, we get very, very specific about Erin's reporting, but then move on to some of my favorite topics like TikTok, career aspirations, and the future of media. If you're not a Nebraska sports person and skip the first 5 minutes, I totally understand. Enjoy our conversation with Erin Sorensen. Okay, Erin, I was much more just excited to talk to you compared to the other guests I bring on.
Oh boy.
Yes, yeah. When I was prepping, I was like, all right, I'm just excited for the conversation.
Hopefully, I live up to it.
Yes, I'm sure you will. But before getting into it, a word from our sponsor, Runza. The Commonwealth could not be possible without Runza as a sponsor, and I learned right before recording that Erin is a huge fan of Runza, specifically Temperature Tuesday, which is going on for 6 weeks, which Erin just told me. What is your go-to Runza for Temperature Tuesday?
Well, I've only ever gotten the original Runza. Maybe Runza can tell me, are other Runzas an option? I don't know. I'm always just a regular, traditional Runza, not cheese.
Always? You've never gotten cheese or
the
Swiss?
I've had them. I just, on Temperature Tuesday, I just get a regular Runza, frings, and a drink. That's just, the go-to. And so maybe other people, is this something I'm now learning? Are other people doing things? Am I missing out?
So I think for Temperature Tuesday, you would just pay for the cheese. So it's 15 cents extra. Or I'm a big Swiss mushroom Runza guy. So you just pay the whatever the difference is.
Yeah, I like the pepper jack Runza.
Oh,
that one's really good.
I've never tried that.
It's got a fancier name than that. So I totally did not just do that.
Okay.
Service for them. But yeah, Temperature Tuesday is like a religion in this state.
Absolutely. And again, shout out to Runza for helping us put on the show. Okay, so Erin, this is not necessarily a sports podcast, and our audience is split between Nebraska and Colorado.
Okay.
But there are some, Nebraska sports questions that I would just like to pose to you at the start and kind of get them out of the way to then talk about more broad things after the fact.
Yeah.
The first being, so you report on the Nebraska football team and meet with you get one-on-one time with Scott Frost occasionally.
Yeah, it's been a while with COVID, but yeah, he definitely, it's always hard. And I always wonder this a little bit about other programs because Nebraska is a little bit unique in how many media members cover the team. It's a bit crazy. So when you do get one-on-one time, it's pretty, it's a big deal. So like I said, I haven't had an opportunity to speak to him one-on-one recently because of COVID. But
makes sense.
In pre-COVID days, I've been fortunate to have the chance to talk to him about a number of different things. But yeah, weird times.
Yeah. Is there a difference between your perspective of Scott Frost compared to the fandom, the Nebraska football fandom?
I would say Scott Frost, the coach that you see in front of you with interviews and stuff, when you see him at a press conference, whether it's after practice or at a game, I almost feel like that Scott Frost is a little bit different than the Scott Frost you'd see if he's just if he's in his office or if he's away from the cameras. And I think that's kind of the case with a lot of people. Anyone who lives in the public eye, they're very hyper aware of how they need to act and how they need to sort of speak when there's a camera right in their face and how that changes when that's gone. And we knew this a little bit from Central Florida when he was there because people would say this, but there's obviously a different level of media coverage at Central Florida than there is at Nebraska.
Okay. Nebraska being more, I would assume.
More intense,
yes,
yeah, for sure. He's definitely a lot, I'd say, more quirky than people probably realize. He's definitely very sarcastic, has a very, he's got a good sense of humor. I would say you see that sometimes come out in press conferences, when he's, throwing a little dig at somebody. But yeah, he definitely knows when there's a camera on him how he probably needs to act, where he's a little bit more free.
Yes.
I would say I would say that's just, like I said, the case for so many people. It's once the camera's gone, they kind of
loosen up, feel
a little bit more relaxed. And so you get to see a little bit more of their true personality in that environment, which I'd say is the case for him.
Okay, nice. So then next sport, the hype surrounding the Nebraska basketball recruiting class coming up and then the talent they have currently. Do you think that hype is legit?
Basketball. Oh, wow. See, this is where, if you're a Hail Varsity fan, Jacob Padilla is your guy because he is the basketball guru. I just trust everything he says.
Okay.
I have actually, because as Hale Varsity has grown, I have actually kind of gotten bumped from the basketball beat a little bit.
Okay.
Now, I will say, I actually was just talking about Nebraska basketball and how they can. Why do we seem to still have hope that this team will get better?
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why is because the recruits that they have, or the commitment, or those that they have coming into the program, are some of the bigger. They need bigger guys. They need bigger players. They need to be able to match up better in the Big Ten, which right now they just don't really have the size, but they have those players coming in. So I was just talking about that yesterday, that is probably why there's some hope that there's, more for this team, that once they do have more size available, things will be a little bit better. Now, obviously, that's not completely perfect because there's all kinds of stuff of how do they get the offense working a little bit more efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Jacob Padilla is basketball expert, 110%. So I will always just
refer to him.
But it is funny. I was literally just talking about they need more size, and they do have size at least. That's the plan coming into the program. So
yes.
We'll see if that is part of what helps make a difference.
Okay, yes. And it seemed like we're starting to at least look like a Big Ten basketball team,
Getting
which is
there.
exciting, yes.
I mean, the thing that's exciting for me, when I was in college, the basketball coach was Doc Sadler.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people really, really like Doc. I thought he was great when he was at Nebraska originally. So it's fun that he's back, and he does have it, one part of the whole thing is that's been going pretty well. I'm sure Jacob would tell you plenty that can be improved on, but he's been doing a pretty good job with the defense, and that's where he's a defensive mind. So
okay,
yeah, it's cool to see Doc Sadler back. I think Nebraska's lucky to have him again.
Yes, yeah, and then the last very nitty gritty Nebraska sports question is the Nebraska volleyball team. How confident are you that they're going to make it to the Final Four this year with the weird season and it's kind of been fractured and delayed and all of that?
Honestly, I mean, I would never bet against Nebraska volleyball. They're just too good. They're the 1990s Nebraska football. They're the current Alabama football. When you look at the volleyball world, they are top tier. There's just very few other programs who are doing what they're doing. Now you have Stanford and Penn State, Texas, who also are very strong, but I would be very shocked if they're not in the Final Four. I think for them knowing that it's in Omaha will also help really continue motivating them. I think that's just an extra benefit if they can get there to have that home crowd. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would not bet against that team. This team, the team itself is just so good. I've often referred to them as Wonder Women. They are 100% are. They are some of the toughest, baddest athletes I have ever been around. They're good. I would not bet against them.
Yes, yeah, and being a fan of sort of all Nebraska sports, it's a lot of fun having one team as dominant as that program has been over the last a decade plus.
Yeah, so. John Cook really took a team that was trending. It's not like Nebraska. I mean, John Cook just took a good team and continued to elevate them and just make them even better. And so, yeah, there are just few programs in any sport. That's the thing is, I think sometimes we tend to compare sports like I just did, where it's the 1990s Nebraska. The thing is Nebraska volleyball right now is Nebraska volleyball. They stand on their own against really any dominant team of any sport. That's where they're at right now. So they're pretty phenomenal. I'm excited to see what they can do. It's going to be a weird season for them. Just how the schedule breaks down. You basically travel to one place every weekend, or someone travels to you play them twice. It'll be weird, but it might benefit them, honestly.
Yes, yeah, and I was looking at it before this, that the original Final Four was scheduled for December, and now it's in April. So even just the stop and go of this season, it'll be interesting to see how that affects everything. Yep. So we will put a chapter mark in this.
Because especially if you have Colorado listeners, they're probably we don't want to talk about Nebraska Huskers. We'd rather talk about the Buffs or Colorado State. I get it.
Yes. So now moving to the portion where like those people can skip to this part. How would you where would you place Hail Varsity in like the Nebraska sports media landscape? Like, how is it different than the World Herald and Husker Extra and all of the different media outlets that cover Nebraska sports?
Where did I just see this the other day? And I'm going to see if I can find it really fast because I saw a comment. I just found it. This is perfect. Serendipity.
I love the live fact checking.
Yep. Yes. Somebody commented on our Instagram and said, good stuff with a great twist. And I said, that's what I aim to be. I aim for Hail Varsity to be good stuff with a great twist. And what I mean by that is, especially in the Nebraska media landscape, we are all doing what we can. We get pretty much the same access and availability. And honestly, if you get one-on-one interviews, they're fairly fleeting because somebody else gets one or whatever you talked about in that interview is already on to the next thing. So, it's, especially if you're a newspaper, that stuff is great because that is what you're trying to do is you're still trying to put together a paper, have a little bit more of that traditional sense. It doesn't always work so well for like what we're doing with Hail Varsity. Now, we do have the magazine portion, so long form feature writing, we still have that.
And monthly, right?
Yes, monthly. Okay. And we do have our annual football yearbook, which is a big 160 page project that we do every June. That comes out every June. But I always think of Hail Varsity as just this, how can we be just a little bit edgier, a little bit different? You're still going to get all the same news. So you're going to come to our website, you're still going to find out that Nebraska and Purdue had to, postpone the basketball game that was supposed to be played. Or you're still going to find out that this player is returning. Or you're still going to get a good story because one of our writers spoke with athletic director Bill Moose. You're still going to get all of that, which, I mean, if you're looking at it at just that level, we're all competing there. Where I think that we have always really taken advantage from the moment we were founded was finding a social presence. So whether it's our growth on Twitter, our growth on Facebook, Instagram, now TikTok. We're always trying to find new ways of connecting with people, but we're pretty we don't just do it for the sake of going for it. It's always kind of should we not? Can we make it useful? Is it going to be something that adds to our brand? So when we went on to TikTok, it was all right, full steam ahead, we're going to go for it. But that means now the next one that we do, it's kind of thinking that same way. Is this something where we're ready to put the time? Because if we are, I want to be really dang good at it. So that's, like I said, good stuff, but with a great twist.
What else are you watching that you mentioned? TikTok is the newest emerging platform that's really blown up. What else are you keeping your eye on?
I know one right now that a lot of people have been telling me about, and I'm still kind of on the fence about where it fits for people, is Clubhouse. I'm on Clubhouse. I think the way I phrased it, I was I could see Clubhouse being big in a LinkedIn way, but not in a Facebook way. I think sometimes when we do that, a Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the verdict is still out on TikTok to a good degree. But a lot of these things are catching lightning in a bottle. You aren't going to have every single new thing that comes out isn't going to be the thing. So I think there was one time some social app called Circle, and it's that has gone to the wayside wherever that is at.
Yes.
I mean, Vine, I think, had potential, but couldn't find a way to monetize itself properly. And so that is now gone. I'd say Snapchat has kind of run its course. I think there are still people who really like Snapchat, but I just don't see how it works necessarily for brand usage. I think brands are still trying to find a way to be present on the app, but most of those brands have now shifted away. So when I look at Clubhouse, I kind of think what is it about it that's different that's going to give it something that people will want to be there for. Now, I spent a little bit of time on it. Last night, I was kind of scrolling through some of the rooms. And it is cool that you can, essentially listen to presentations from people. You can listen to people's stories. There's one room I jumped in on that anyone who's in there got 1 minute to basically share, it was TED Talk. But, 1 minute, share your story, and then on to the next.
Okay.
I think that could be really interesting, for companies who maybe are looking for a different way to like host conferences or maybe like work related things, maybe even like with press conferences, there's an opportunity there where you could maybe allow people to listen in that format if they want to. I don't know if I see people like actively running to Clubhouse to like get all of their news, because I don't think people are trying to listen to all of their news necessarily, or like, I think there's a place for it. It's just, again, will they be able to capitalize on it? Will they be able to find where they belong before ultimately they have to kind of come to that fork in the road of like, can we sustain this or not?
Yes.
So we'll see.
Yeah, and the access that Clubhouse gives you is the thing that I guess intrigues me. I'm like last night I also spent like 30 minutes just like browsing it as the like next up and coming platform, and I was in a room with Gary Vee and like 100 people, and I would never be able to get that access with Gary Vee outside of Clubhouse.
Yeah, I mean, there was some like, when I first like got on the app and they asked me like they ask everyone the series of like, what are you interested in? Like they go through all these different topics like sports or fashion, beauty, whatever. And so then it makes a recommendation based on that, who you should follow. And yeah, when I was looking at it, I was like, oh, there's some impressive people on this list. Like there are some pretty like cool people that like, awesome. I have one follower. But like I was like going through the list and kind of like, because it pops up and it's like, here's 50 people that you might be interested in. I was like, sure, follow them all. Like I should have maybe like gone through it, but I was like, whatever, follow them all. So then I finally went into the following and was like, not everyone's name I recognized, but then I started to see like, oh, this individual is the sports partnership director at Twitter. Oh, this person is the sports marketing director at Nike. So I can see why they got recommended to me. And yeah, like from an access standpoint, like that's pretty dang cool that it's like, oh, so if this person decides to go host something, I can go listen in. I wouldn't probably had that access in that way before, especially because I have to go look and see what they're doing on Twitter, but like it's still a little bit different. So I think there is an opportunity for something like Clubhouse to find where it belongs. Like I said, it's always hard because like this is one of those things where somebody said, should Hail Varsity be on Clubhouse? I don't know, because my question right now would be, where does Hail Varsity fit in that world? What is Hail Varsity offering? Because I feel like in that case, Hail Varsity is more of the offerer, like not so much the one sitting in and listening, maybe, but like, are we able to offer something that people want to be engaged with? It's going to like, it's almost like sometimes like these things are like almost entirely separate full-time jobs for people. So we'll see. It's interesting. I get excited, but I'm always hesitant because I'm like, it's really easy to chase the like rainbow on these things and only get to the end of it and be met with nothing. So
yes, but on the flip side, and the thing I always struggle with is there is an advantage of being an early adopter. Yes. So like that is just, I guess, the edge you have to teeter on of like, is this going to be a waste of time or is it going to blow up and actually be something?
Yeah, and so like in the case of like the Nebraska sports media market, Hail Varsity has always sort of been at the forefront of a lot of what we've done. So we were one of the first Nebraska media brands outside of the university itself that was using Instagram in the way that we were. Same thing with Twitter. We were one of the first that was like actively using Twitter in the way that we were. And what I mean by that is like a lot of people were using Twitter to like share a story, but we were like actively trying to find ways of sharing our photos, trying to be a little bit more engaging, creating a voice. Creating the voice of Hail Varsity has always been incredibly important to me. That's actually like, the funny thing is like if you spend enough time with Hail Varsity, like you can sometimes, like I think most people at this point know they hear me, but it is not truly just me. Like Hail Varsity's voice is sort of it kind of encompasses what I imagine Hail Varsity to be if it was a person. And it's not like Hail Varsity has a face and like I see this person, but this is a person that is like sort of a culmination of like who I feel our followers are, what they are sort of like how they're replying to us. So yeah, you do hear me, but it's not just me, because if it was, then you could just follow my account.
Yes, yeah. Do you think of yourself as more of a content strategist or a journalist?
I would say both, which actually frustrates some people because like So when I started in college, so I started at the University of Nebraska in 2006, and I started as a broadcasting major.
Okay.
At the time, UNL broke its journalism program down into 3 different sections. You were either broadcasting, news editorial, or advertising. What happened is over like the first 2 years of my time at Nebraska, the world of journalism was starting to change. Like you
Yes.
didn't just need to know how to run a camera. You also needed to know how to do you needed to know how to write a little bit as well. Or if you're going to work for a newspaper, you might still need to know how to run a camera. So things were shifting, and I had a pretty frank conversation with my advisor where I expressed to him, I'm like, what I'm learning in broadcasting right now is not what I want. Like, this is teaching me how to basically be like a 6 p.m. news producer. And like, I don't want to do that. At the time, like things like Bleacher Report were becoming bigger. Blogs were kind of just like starting to take off in a way that I was like, this is all really interesting to me. I think I need to know how to do more of like all of this and not just so much this hyper-focused thing. And he's like, I agree with you. So what might make sense is you should maybe get your degree in something that you could essentially fall back on, but still take those classes.
Okay.
So I moved into advertising.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay.
But it just like news editorial didn't seem like the right fit, and I wasn't happy in broadcasting. So like I moved into advertising, but because it was still in the journalism college, I kept taking all of the journalism classes I wanted. I had a focus in advertising. It was sort of just perfect happenstance that at that time, brands were starting to try to figure out how do we utilize things like Facebook how do we utilize Facebook to be a part of the conversation? How do brands get on? So I was a part of this thing called the National Student Advertising Competition. And I remember my junior year, I was coming up with like ad plans for how to utilize Facebook for this client when they didn't even have brand pages at the time. Like there was not, so if you were creating anything on Facebook, you're basically creating like a user profile, acting like a person. There were no guidelines on like contests, nothing. So like it was all just like new, but that really kind of gave me that other side of it. So I've always believed, at least in my being, that social media is journalism. And I tell young people this all the time. A tweet might only be so many characters, but every single one of those characters is telling a story. That's what journalism is. And we see that though, like with breaking news anymore. People like often go at Twitter and they go, well, you don't know what's true and what's not. And that's fair. But like news breaks on Twitter. And if you're a journalist, you know how to utilize Twitter to effectively communicate those things. Or are you waiting for the traditional source of like, well, I got to get it out through this? Because that's not how it works any longer. So I kind of think of myself almost as both, where I'm like, so my title with Hail Varsity is Deputy Editor and Digital Marketing Strategist. I really have a hard time wanting to let go of either of those things because I love telling stories. I love writing. I like doing that. I love the people part of it. I love the telling the stories of people and like what makes them who they are. But I also love the social piece of it. I actually think they're pretty like intertwined.
How do you see the difference between the two? How is content different than journalism?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, like, for instance, let's take initially one of Nebraska's defensive backs, Cam Taylor-Britt, when he made the decision that he was going to return for another year. I mean, the first thing we're doing, it's like time is of the essence in that. So we retweeted him or we're immediately just tweeting something out. Whereas in the past, it was very much like, go get a story. We want people to click on that. The story actually came second. The tweet and like getting the news out that way was first, which, I mean, that's hard, but that journalism piece was still important. It's like putting the story together where it's like, here's the context you need to know. So he's staying, here's his tweet. Okay, here's what you need to know about him. Here's what he did during his junior season. This is why you should care about it. This is what's important. That added more to it. Now, we could have just left it as a tweet and just been like, he's coming back. But I think you still need more context. Like, context matters. Journalism is what provides that context. So I think social media is a good, like, immediate, like, it allows you that opportunity to show somebody, hey, here's what you need to know now. But with that said, too, Hail Varsity also has this voice where we can be a little bit goofy. We can be a little bit strange and quirky. And for instance, we shared our TikTok of Cam Taylor-Britt dancing to a Megan Thee Stallion song.
Okay.
And now, like, that's super, like, not normal journalism, but it's fun. Like, people on social media are like, okay, I like this. Like, that thing was, like, I think the last time I looked, it had, like, 9 retweets and stuff. So, like, people were liking it. They're engaging with it. But that can't be the only thing we share about him. Like, there has to be a story there, too. Like, we need to tell people more about, like, it's not just that. So I think journalism and social media can go hand in hand, but, like, one needs to be more of the, like, information story side of things, and the other side needs to be, like, more of the, like, immediate fun, you know, they kind of almost are, like, married in a way if you do it correctly. But I'll be honest, it's a bit of a it's not easy, because I think sometimes, like, people are like, well, old school journalism would not like what social media is today.
Not at all.
But we're not living in old school journalism any longer. So I think finding a way to make old school journalism sort of work with the new school way of doing things is always what I'm striving to do. How do you make those two worlds? And sometimes we fumble over it, but I think a lot of times it's just kind of allowing those things to live independently of one another and allow them to come together at the same time.
Yes, yeah. And you mentioned, like, I guess, unpacking a question in the mid-2000s of how do brands make money from social media. And that same question is getting posed to media companies now of how do, like, traditional newspapers and media outlets make money from social media. So how do you begin to unpack that?
Well, so that's the benefit of social media, is that a lot of things like TikTok and YouTube have the ability to monetize them.
Okay.
Because, to be quite honest, and this is a more complex situation than just, like, if we had the answers to this, we would solve so much in the media industry.
Yeah.
But for so long, with the way that the internet worked, no one charged anything for no subscriptions didn't mean anything on the internet. Everything was free there, which was different, because when you were a newspaper and you had a physical product, and people bought that physical product, it made sense to them, because they were like, this physical product is being brought to my house every single day, and I'm getting this newspaper to read. Second, it was online. It was like, it's no longer a physical product. It's like, this thing should be free to me. I should be able to have this content available to me. So along the road, when people essentially did that, where it was like, okay, you're going to basically give everything away for free on your website, that started to come back to bite every media and journalism company across the board, because how do you suddenly then tell people, well, hold up, it actually costs us money to put this content together, so could you please pay for it? Because now people are like, well, why are you gating my my content? Like, I just want to read about my community. I want to read about my team. Like, why are you gating this? Why can't I have it for free? Why can't you just put advertisers on there? But the thing is like, advertisers are also looking for, like, well, what's the benefit of this? And so you're constantly playing this game of, like, you're playing the numbers game of wanting, like, you need enough reads and viewers to get the advertisers, but you also are not going to probably be able to, like, fully sustain your business just on that alone. So then you need subscribers. But you can't get subscribers unless you're giving them something that they feel value in that product. So then you're like, okay, well, I can't give away everything for free. It's honestly, the day that this whole thing started, where the internet started putting, like, news stories online, and the fact that it wasn't gated from day one, is the thing that that media companies are still trying to correct to this day. And I get it. I see it all the time. People who are like, well, why do I have to pay for it? So, like, we have people who understand, like, I'll pay for your magazine. Hail Varsity's magazine, that makes sense. It's a physical, tangible product. But, like, why should I pay for anything on your website? Can't you just get advertisers for that? It's like, yeah, but we also need the support of you, the reader, to make this thing keep going. It's just a double-edged sword. Like I said, if we had the answers to this, we would be, like
advising local and regional
we would be
newspapers
billionaires.
across the country.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I will say, this is where social media has been really important for us, is we have found ways of, like, partnering with brands through Instagram story activations, or by selling property through social, like through tweets. You see that a lot more now, the presented by at this handle.
Yeah.
That does allow for us to find more partnership opportunities, and that's through social media. So, yeah, it's kind of like I said, it's a problem that has existed for a very long time, and unfortunately, I think we're going to continue to kind of find this, like, butting of heads, if you will. But social media has allowed another, at least, channel for partnerships and sponsorship opportunities that sometimes aren't always readily available through just the journalism side of things.
Yes, yeah. Is the Hail Varsity TikTok account in the Creators Fund?
It is.
Damn. Okay. Well, congratulations.
Thank
That's a big deal. It is like the essence of a good TikTok account.
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah. Like as I was onboarding Chris Gorman, who runs our media and entertainment, I was like, oh, check out all these different accounts. And then when I arrived on the Hail Varsity TikTok, I was like, they should not change anything. This is perfect.
And I'm glad that you say that, because when we finally jumped in on TikTok, which we had the handle for a while, and I kept telling Chris Gorman, he'd be like, we got to get into this. I'm like, I'm just not ready yet. I have to think about this, because I want it to feel very authentic and not forced. Like, I just have to have a little time with it. And it was like August of 2020 where I finally was like, all right, I'm ready. Like, I think we're ready. Like, I think I've got an idea. I've watched enough of other people's TikToks to kind of have an idea of where I think we fit in this space. And the thing that I noticed in the Nebraska space, at least, is you had fans who are sharing, like, very fan things, like their basements and, like, their fun, like, videos from the games. You had the Nebraska official accounts, which were a little bit more edited. Like, they were taking, like, high quality video and editing them and using their own sound and doing that, and it looked really nice, very popular. But I'm like, well, we don't really need to be that.
Yeah.
So I realized where there was a space missing was just sort of that, like, look behind the lens of a sports team or sports teams that feels a little bit more, like, organic, that's not overly edited. So we're using the songs that are trending or the trends that are popular right now, but, like, not editing them on a computer, just editing them right in the app and allowing sort of the video, and, like, you pick that up and you feel like your friend may have shot that video. It's not professional, like, videography, because a lot of it's coming from an iPhone, but it's very human. It's very personal. And that was where I felt like this is where we fit.
Okay, yeah. Well, the execution was A+.
Thank you.
Yes, nice job, Erin. Okay, so did you, before getting into journalism, did you have, like, a romanticized view of being a journalist?
It's funny you say that. I just found a photo in my mom's house the other day of my newspaper pass. It was like my press pass from, like, my junior year of high school.
Okay. It's funny that they gave out.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, things. Like, it's like a laminated, like, white piece of paper, and I'm, like, standing there in sunglasses trying to act tough. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I thought journalism was, honestly, and this is going to sound sort of dorky, but, like, if you're a Gilmore Girls fan, you'll understand. Like, I watched Gilmore Girls growing up. Rory Gilmore, the daughter, was really interested in journalism, and I think that was, like, my understanding of it. I saw her, like, in the show, which I don't know, it's not true. Like, I mean, they romanticize a lot of how things work, but I think I really didn't understand what journalism, especially sports journalism, could look like for women. So, like, I don't even know what I thought. The only women I really ever saw growing up in a sports journalism world was Linda Cohn at the Sports Center desk, and then Erin Andrews. And those were, like, the two women I knew. So when I was like, I know I want to be in sports media, I know I want to do this, like, I had no idea what it looked like. So, like, I don't even know if I had anything to romanticize, because I was just like, where do I fit in this space? Like, do I belong here? Like, there just wasn't anyone, at least, especially at a local level, that looked like me, that I could, like, look at and be like, what does the world of journalism look like? Even, like, shadowing someone, I didn't know what, like, that looked like. My understanding of journalism was, like, the field trip we took to the Omaha World Herald every year to, like, watch the papers. Like,
Yeah.
Like,
which I would still have fun doing.
Oh,
today.
that was that was badass. Like, I enjoyed everything about that. But, like, I don't think I understood, like, and honestly, I sometimes think that's for the better. I think I got into my job with so few expectations. I think I knew nothing about what I was getting into. I think I was just like, let's have some fun. And I kind of have stumbled my way here. for better or worse.
Yeah.
Because with that said, there are people who have given me feedback in my lifetime, and some of it I feel is fair criticism, and some of it I just don't really honestly care about. That like, I'm not a traditional journalist. I have too much of the social media side. I'm a little bit too much fun. I'm a little bit too much this. I don't take everything, completely seriously.
Your content answer would be like a journalism professor would throw their hands up and.
Oh, I've had that conversation. So I had been helping out in the College of Journalism for a couple of semesters, and that is a conversation I've had with multiple journalist professors who are like, I don't agree with you. I've been told you shouldn't even take anything, like you shouldn't even be taking meals from the press box because like it's there's like a conflict of interest there. And it's like, I mean, I've had people criticize everything about the like relationships that they feel I have or have not formed like with anyone. And that's the thing that's always been really hard for me is like, there's a line between sources and there's a line between somebody that's like, I don't even cover them. So like, it doesn't really matter. But like, I've had all kinds of feedback thrown at me. I will say most of the journalism professors that I've had the opportunity of working with or speaking with in the journalism college are always super understanding, like willing to at least have the conversation. And like, I always feel like we leave those conversations with a better understanding of where we're at. But there are some people, I would say a little bit of it has to do with me being a woman. They feel like I'm, sometimes not taking things seriously enough or whatever. And it's like, if I'm doing my job and I'm not hurting you in the process and I'm not, that story that was out of the person who fell in love with their source. I've never fallen in love with a source. So like, maybe let's just not make it a big deal. Like if it's like, if I'm not harming it, I think sometimes like we're just afraid of what we don't know.
Yes. Yeah. And you mentioned, when like talking about the lack of role models in journalism before getting into it, you mentioned like a sense of belonging. How have you gone about establishing that sense of belonging in the journalism community when there is some pushback about like the approach to content or the approach to voice or?
Mm-hmm. I would say, so thankfully because of social media, I have found groups like, so I found women on Twitter who I admire. I've had the chance to get to know because of Twitter. I would not have known them otherwise. One group that I'm a huge fan of is Laura Oakman. She is a sports broadcaster for the NFL on Fox. She founded this group called Galvanize. It's just a group for women in sports. I've had the opportunity to do Zoom calls with them. I've had the opportunity to just be a part of the group. It's really great to see women at all different levels across the country doing different things, from sports broadcasting, sports media, social media in sports, whether they're working specifically for a team, maybe they're working for a news outlet, like all walks of life. It's been so helpful because what I just shared with you is the exact same thing I've heard from so many other women who are like, I just feel like I get criticized a lot for like what I'm doing. I'm either too pretty, I'm either not pretty enough, I'm either too big, I'm too skinny, I'm too personable, I'm not personable enough, I look like a bitch, I don't have enough of an edge. I like to hear the amount of women who are constantly like, I just get so much feedback, like on what I'm wearing, on I should wear tighter clothes, I should wear looser clothes, I'm too this, I'm too that. Like at somewhere along my path, and like I'm constantly working on this, I just had to stop kind of caring what people thought. Now there is some legitimate criticism that I have faced. Like my boss, my editor, he has shared feedback with me on things where he's like, I think like maybe this would be a better way to approach this. I appreciate that because we're all learning in all of our jobs how to be better at what we do. That is like when I feel like the criticism is fair because it's like I'm showing you maybe not necessarily that like what you're doing is bad, just here's a different way to like maybe approach that thing. I really appreciate it. Where I don't is like when I feel like the person is coming at it from a point of like, I just don't like how you do it. Because you might not like how I do something, but is it because that thing is bad? Or is it just because it threatens you for some reason? Or because it's different than what you've been used to? So I'll be honest, one of my favorite people to talk to is Mike Babcock. He's a legend in Nebraska media, and he is often my like guiding post. Like, he's often my North Star. Like, I'll ask him like, hey, what do you think about this? And he is one of the most understanding individuals where he's like, things have changed. Times have changed. And like how you're doing this now may not have been how I did it 30 years ago, but like how I did it 30 years ago is not how someone did it 30 years before that. Like, come on. Some of these places, some of these press boxes didn't have women's restrooms 30 years ago. So, I mean, like, we have to be careful as journalism continues to evolve and adapt and media continues to evolve and adapt, that we don't get so stuck in how it's been done that we're not willing to let people grow and determine how it maybe can be done better or can be evolved. Mm-hmm. So it's hard. But like I said, the beautiful thing about social media is it has given me this large network of women in sports that honestly I would have never known or found if it hadn't been for social media.
Yes, yeah. And so this is my last question for you, Erin.
Yes.
What is your North Star in all of this? Like, you're working in an industry that's changing very rapidly and will probably continue to change the next 10 years as it has over the last 10. What is your overall goal with the career? Like, when you go about setting that North Star that you just mentioned, what is that?
I think there's almost two answers here. So when I first started, and this still very much drives me every single day, the thing that I wake up for every single day is the stories, the people. Like, the people have always, hands down, been the reason I do my job. I want to tell really good stories, and I really want to tell stories that bring light to a person in a way that others may not have, like, thought about before. So using this as an example, but when I did the day in the life of Adrian Martinez, that was between his freshman and his sophomore year. It really wasn't so much about Adrian Martinez, the football player. It was more about Adrian Martinez, the person who's balancing football and school and life and all of these things. And I had this idea of like, what does it look like to be him from the moment his alarm goes off at 6 a.m. until the moment he goes to bed at whatever time that might be on that given day. And so I spent an entire day with him, just following him around. I went to class with him. I mean, he was so gracious about it, by the way, like absolute rock star in that sense, because it's probably really awkward to have somebody that like you barely know at the time trailing you around all day.
How was going to class with him?
Weird, yeah. Because everyone is like hyper focused on me, and like the cool thing about Adrian is like it just did not faze him at all. Like he's just like cool as a cucumber. I'm sitting there like sweating bullets, like why are all these people staring at me? He just doesn't care. So he was super. Like I learned a lot about his personality through that as well, because I'm like, here's this person who has all eyes on him, even has more attention because I'm with him, and he could not have cared less. So I think that has always been my guide. My guidepost is like, I just want to tell really good stories. I just really want to bring more to the world of sports journalism than just what happened. Let's go beyond that to the people who make this happen. What should we and what do we need to know about them? Some stories are good, some stories are not, but it's the human side of it that has always really, really moved me. And then with that said, and this I would not have said 10 years ago, this has probably surfaced more within the last 4 to 5 years. I am by no means a martyr. I am by no means going to be the best to come out of Nebraska. In fact, there are other women who've come out of Nebraska and who are working for ESPN or working in the NFL, doing some really cool stuff. So by no means am I the only one. But I do feel a certain responsibility in this space now to be the person that I didn't see when I was growing up. I feel a responsibility to the young women who are in middle school, high school, college, who are looking for somebody on a local level where they're like, if she can do it, I can do it times 100. And that really moves me too. So that's a little less journalism and more of just how can I be a role model in this space? But that also has kept me here. And that has kept me through job changes. When I get really worried about will I ever find a space here? Will people want to keep me in this space? I don't really care. I have to stay in this space because if I don't, who else is going to do it? And so I feel again, I'm not a martyr by any means, but it does feel like something for me. I feel like I'm making a difference every single time I hear from a young woman who's like, because I saw you, I feel like I can go like move 100 mountains. And I'm like, please go move 100 mountains, because every single one of those mountains you're going to move is going to open so many doors that I was never able to open for somebody else. So those are the two things.
Yes, the second one is a Kamala Harris answer. It's a very, very
yes.
Yes.
It's definitely like, and like Sasha, who's in the room with us right now, knows.
Who is the co-host of the Mind Your Own podcast, which is Sasha and Erin's podcast. So go check it out. Yes.
You know, it's really important for people. If you can see it, you can be it. If you can see it, you can believe it. Like when you see a toy, a doll that looks like you, or you see somebody doing something that seems of interest to you. Every single time you see someone who looks like you doing something that you might want to do, it's a game changer. It totally changes the way that you feel you can handle something. So, yeah, it is definitely the Kamala Harris answer, but it's like, maybe, and this is how I always feel about it, maybe you don't always agree with everything I do. Maybe you don't like everything I stand for. Maybe you don't even like Nebraska football. But I hope that at least when you look at me, you go, she's at least trying to make this industry better and more welcoming for even more women, and hopefully as an ally for people of color, by just being here and by showing up every day and hopefully just taking the ladder that was passed to me and passing it back down.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this conversation lived up to how I hyped it beforehand. So thank you for joining me. Yes, yeah. And thank you for listening to today's conversation. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. We release episodes every Monday, so stay tuned for next week.